It's so funny
And
how you
see,
can
now
have it
what
both
this is so
ways.
weird. You call women delusional
Men are
for
disenfranchised and women are delusional. Men are disenfranchised because pornography has made them
wow, you
have
just reduced
a
our entire sex to being delusional and men is disenfranchised. So we
yes,
sound
men are
like we have,
disenfranchised.
oh, let me guess, mental health issues. Oh, women have mental
No, I think
health
men have
issues.
I think men have mental health issues.
Yes,
Both.
that
That's
you
why
know
men got
what? If they had
disenfranchised.
spent more of their time actually focused on their mental and emotional health, perhaps they wouldn't be in this situation. But I stood by and watched for decades as men excused all manner of horrendous behavior in the workplace and were perfectly fine with their mouths zipped shut while women made a lot less than them. And if I had also grown up in a society where most of the men were actually stepping up to be the fathers that they should have been, then perhaps I would have a different opinion. But I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1970s, and I remember the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of kids I grew up throughout the 70s and the 80s
Correct.
that did
It's so
not have
great.
a male father figure in the household,
They
that
sure
didn't have
didn't.
anyone to
Yeah.
learn from, who the man was not around, he wasn't paying bills, he wasn't taking care of his family, and he was all fucking around somewhere. I watched that with my
So
own eyes.
according to what you're saying, 43% of the children in this country are born to a single household, and 78% of teachers are female. But the problem is toxic masculinity. That's it.
Oh my God. What you mean teachers because that's the underpaid teacher role because it's a
Yes,
feminine
but there's
job
still
because we
teacher. But there's
underpay any
Cynthia.
role in society that has
Cynthia,
because
please
we're going to
don't
put
hurt
the
your
emotional
Cynthia.
and mental
Don't hurt
labor.
your back moving the goalposts.
No, no,
That's
no,
not the
no.
question I
I'm
asked.
not. No, no,
One more
no.
time.
I'm just going to
78%
say
of
you
teachers are
named off a
female,
couple of
and
feminine jobs
43.
which
One more
are
time. Well,
underpaid
it's not that.
because they're feminine
One more, it's not,
jobs.
again. Let's do a different debate on that. Number one. 43% of children born in
Yes,
this country
they're born
are
to
born to
single women
single.
because
One more
men
time.
don't step
One
up.
more time. One more time. 43% of the children in this country are born in single family households, and 78% of the teachers are female. And yet you think it's toxic masculinity that is
Yeah.
being
Oh my
taught to these
God.
people
There's
that's
no men
causing them to
around
not
for
step
them
up.
to
Let me say it
learn
one more
from.
time.
You're literally acknowledging the
43% of the
actual
children,
problem. You're acknowledging
43%
the
of the children,
problem. There
40,
are no men
correct.
around. They
Correct.
are
So
not
because
around, and
right,
they are
but
not
you're
around
trying
in
to
a
have it both
role in
ways.
which they are.
One more
They
time.
should be if they
One more
want to
time,
teach.
Cynthia. Yeah, that's so great. One more time. You're trying to have it both ways. Men
No,
are
I'm
not
not. I'm
stepping up and
telling you,
not
it's that
awareness, and men
complicated.
are the problem. Men
No,
are not stepping
men
up,
were
and men
not
are not
around
there.
as
Men are
fathers
not
for
around.
a
Hold on,
very,
listen,
the
listen, listen.
majority of them were not
Everybody, pay
around as
attention because
fathers
we're
for a
getting
very
this
long
on
time. So
video.
you're saying
We're
because
getting this on
women were
video.
burdened with raising
Men were not.
these
Hold
people
on.
that it's their
Beautiful. I totally
fault?
agree with you.
It's the
Totally
lack
fine.
of
But
male figures in this world
correct.
acting with
Totally agree
that
with you. Lack
masculine.
of male figures. Totally agree. But you're trying to have it both ways. Men were not around to coach these children, and men are also the reason why they're toxically masculine. You can't have it both ways.
No, no, no.
If men are
Society
toxically
is
masculine,
toxically
it's
masculine.
because of the so now it's society. So one more time. If
No, okay,
78%
so
of teachers
so
are
we
female,
learn our
but these
behaviors
children
in
are turning
multiple
out to be
ways. We
toxically
learn them from our
masculine, then the
families, we
issue
learn them from our society, we learn them from the media that is reinforced, and they reinforce this whole toxic masculinity. I watched it. Toxic
but
Marlboro men, like it was everywhere. They were
that's not
inundated
Marlboro
with
man
it,
isn't
and
toxically
they were
masculine.
celebrated for the way they treated
One more time.
the lady in their household.
Then I'm not here to blame women, but apparently you are, because if 78% of teachers are female
No,
and
what is it? What is
43%
the
of one more
teachers? As a
time,
matter of fact, you
Cynthia,
should be
one more
praising
time.
those women for being there
I
because if
do.
they
I
weren't
absolutely
there,
am praising them.
what
I
world
don't
would we
have
be
an issue
living
in it at all.
in?
But I am telling you, it did make men more sensitive, and it made men the masculinity that you're referring to. If it exists at all, it exists because of a feminized society that we live in today, where 78% of teachers are female and 43% of these children are growing up with single mothers. If that's the case, then there are no men to blame because you just said that men weren't stepping up. So somehow these men have become
That doesn't actually make
toxically
any
masculine in a
sense.
society. This Cynthia, unfortunately, we're recording this. So the people who are listening, who are going to understand what I'm saying,
Hmm.
78% of teachers are female, but yet this female teacher conundrum is causing men to become
So,
toxically masculine.
so
43% of these
because
women are
men
being,
ran for the hills and didn't take care of their responsibilities, the people
then
that were
men
left
became toxically
behind are
masculine. That's your
responsible.
argument. Your argument is that men ran for the hills, so therefore children became toxically
It's
masculine.
not just that
That's
men
your
ran for the
argument.
hills. The only thing they
But,
did
and
have
you
to
use
look
the
at in their
Marlboro
society,
man as an
look at African
example of
American
toxic
communities.
masculinity.
If you look at African American communities in say the 80s, if the men were even there, they were not. They were taught to show a particular type of masculinity to their kids. You're trying to blame women for being the bearers of the emotional and mental well-being of all
That's
the
not what I'm saying.
children, and you're
I'm not
blaming them
blaming.
for how they turned
Cynthia,
out when men weren't actually taking care of
Cynthia,
business. That's like
you're
saying a
hurting.
company
Cynthia,
that
you're hurting my.
collapses was the fault of the employees.
Cynthia, you're
Is
hurting
the
my neck
fault of
for
the
trying.
founders and the people running
Cynthia,
that
I'm sorry.
company.
I know this must be hard for you. You're hurting my neck by trying to force these words into my mouth. That isn't what I said, and I didn't blame anyone. You blamed this society for toxic
No.
masculinity when the
Yes.
men
Yes.
didn't step up. But there were no men to make the people toxic. That's the problem you're
Yes,
missing.
there were.
It's actually
No.
one
I
more
said
time.
men left their
78% of
relationships and
teachers
didn't
are
take care of
female.
their kids. I did not
43%
say
of
that
these children are
society
showing
did
up.
not have examples of toxic masculine people
For
around them.
sure.
You're talking about a society. Look at what you're saying. You're saying that the women teachers, oh, okay, the role, you mean that role that was underpaid and
Again,
undervalued and
underpaid
talked
has nothing
down
to do with the
to?
fact that they're teachers.
The
I
only role
understand that they're
models that they
underpaid.
did
I
have
agree
were
with you.
men.
I
Were
agree
men.
with you that they're underpaid, but you literally said that there were no. Look what you're doing. There's no male role models, but yet the male role models cause them to become toxically masculine. You haven't thought this
You're
whole
acting
thing
like
through.
television didn't exist and
Okay,
movies
so
didn't
now,
exist.
got
Something that
it.
they
So
were
just so we're
inundated
clear,
with. Just
now
look at
it's
the rap
television.
music. Just
Now it's
look at
television and
rap
music. Got it.
music
Okay,
from the
got it.
late 70s to the 80s to the 90s. The voices, the male voices that they did hear
Correct. And
spoke
women kept
about
sleeping
women
with them.
like hoes
Sure,
and
I agree.
bitches. And
Totally.
that was there. And you're
I
saying
never call
toxic
women bitches or
masculinity
hoes.
wasn't around just
But
because they
I'm
weren't being
curious.
fathers didn't mean their kids weren't being inundated with
Absolutely.
unhealthy role models.
And then women kept sleeping with them.
Yes, and you know what?
And women kept sleeping with
Dumb women. And you know what they
Dumb
have
women.
learned?
Got
They've
it.
learned to stop sleeping with men.
Got it.
That's where we're headed.
So the point was you kept talking about these patriarchal figures that existed in our society
Yes, they
culturally,
did.
and women kept rewarding them with sex
You
and
keep
then
acting
blaming
like
them for the
women had a
society.
whole lot of choice 30 years
Oh,
ago,
so
20
women were
years
then
ago.
forced to sleep with
A
the
lot of what we're
rappers.
dealing with
Women
now
were
is a
forced to
result
sleep
of
with
what
them.
occurred 20, 30 years ago. 20,
Women
30
were
years
forced to.
ago,
I'm
women
47
were
years old. I'm aware
were
what's going
still
on 20, 30 years
struggling
ago.
with being independent and
I
even
totally,
not
I don't
feeling.
disagree with any of that. I don't disagree with any of that. But my point is this idea that now there's excessive levels of toxic masculinity. If you want to talk about the
No, I didn't say
1880s,
there was
fuck
excessive
yes.
levels now. I said that the toxic masculinity is the reason why we're where we are now with adults.
No,
I'm
I mean,
actually
if
concerned about
anything,
our children
we
seeing these
have
overly effeminatized men because I think there's something really unhealthy with the way that's being shoved down everybody's throats because that's not
to
about
be
emotional and
effeminate.
mental maturity. That's about getting attention for your sexual adventures. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with emotional and mental maturity.
We're
I
talking about
love
two different things here.
men
You
who.
think men are too effeminized now?
No, I think that society is pushing an effeminized version of men.
Agreed. I mean, of course they are. That's correct. That's why Will Smith has
They want to
to get him in a
They
dress.
want to weaken the system. It's not. It's really scary.
I'm so confused how you just argued against your own point previously.
No,
Because
I'm not
of
arguing
course,
against my own point. What you're trying to do is reduce things down to like a stat. And the problem is that most of these issues are that complex. There are multiple contributing
agree
factors
that
as to
they're
why we
complex,
end up
but
where we have.
Agree that they're complex, but women in lesbian relationships, women still leave other women more than they do in gay relationships, where men leave other men more. Women are
I don't
leaving
think you
relationships.
can compare gay relationships and lesbian relationships to
Well, you can, and
heterosexual. Those
they
are like
have done it, and
completely different
it's
worlds.
3.5 to 1. Lesbians get divorced at a rate 3.5 times greater than men. So when women
And that
don't have
doesn't
men to
surprise
blame,
me.
they're still getting divorced. When women don't have men to blame, they're still getting divorced. But yet the problem is always
sorry,
men.
but what is I don't know. See how those things actually connect. What do you mean women? What it, women lesbian women and the way they behave in their marriages, which were just in recent years actually allowed, and their attitude about marriage is a lot different than heterosexual people. What does that have to do with women in heterosexual relationships leaving in
Because
record numbers
in science,
recent?
in science, when you're looking for different variables, you control for different variables. In this experiment, the variable that we're seeing and that we're disagreeing on is the reason for divorce. You're saying the reason for divorce is almost entirely because men aren't stepping up. Yet it's 80% of women who are filing for divorce. And so when we control for men, meaning taking men out of the equation, we actually see that the divorce rate increases, which means that women are leaving men even when there's no men to blame. Women are leaving marriages even when there's no men to blame.
I think you're comparing apples and oranges and calling them like bananas. I really don't. And I'm referring to a lot of most of the relationships, a lot of the divorces that happened after the coronavirus, we're talking about relationships that are 10, 20 years old, and we're trying to compare them to gay marriage, which is recent. And the truth is that in most of those situations, people
there's certain states that have been gay marriage for more than 30 years.
The statistics on divorce is that what somebody puts in a form or that they report to a lawyer is not the same thing as the reason that the situation broke down.
Absolutely. So let's look at their actions. They take half. 98% of alimony
take half
from
what?
To
well, I'm sorry, but what men are you referring to? Because you keep acting like this world is filled with men with rolling bank accounts, and the truth is, women make half the money now. Like I don't see that. Well,
they don't quite make half the money, but because they don't make quite half the money. And by the way, when women are surveyed in the workforce, 83% of the time when they're asked, would you rather have been able to stay at home, not work, and be able to take care of the kids? 83% of the time, women in the workforce say that they would rather have been able to stay at home and not work. That's what they chose to say. Okay. I know that's
I've heard
horribly
that
inconvenient
statistic.
for your point,
No,
but
I
that
would
is,
actually find that that statistic doesn't make any sense to me, because the majority of the women that I've met in my career, and I've met thousands of them,
then
would
look up the
know that you
statistic.
can't actually answer anything about your intentions with your future potential
It's,
pregnancies or
it's,
not pregnancies, or whether you stay
it's
home
an
or not.
anonymous survey.
We're literally
It's an
trained.
anonymous survey. It's an
Well,
anonymous survey.
and I don't trust data that you can't trace to the source.
Okay, so
Because I've
we'll look at,
repeatedly
there's
seen, like
multiple,
we talked about
Cynthia,
the
there's
food pyramid. The
multiple,
food
so
pyramid
here's
turned
what you
out to
do.
be
There are
complete bullshit. I don't
multiple
trust
studies that show
scientific
this.
papers, because they're
One more
half
time.
of them are bullshit now.
I don't trust scientific papers. Good. I'm glad we got that on camera. So here's the thing.
Yes, you please
Multiple
do.
sources.
You should go research the fact that they've discovered how many of these journals and these scientific papers turn out to be financed by somebody with an agenda,
correct.
and B, filled with lies.
I'm
That's
so
a fact.
glad.
It's not about
I'm so glad. I know this, and I just did a
I
debate
said
on
I
this.
do
I'm
not believe
so
in
glad
scientific papers.
Exactly. I just did a debate on this. I'm so glad you brought this up, Cynthia. Thank you. They do, and it's all in behavioral psychology. None of that. It's called a replicatable. It's called the issue of replicatability, right? So they weren't able to replicate some of these studies that happened. All of these studies that weren't replicatable were in behavioral psychology. None of them were in evolutionary psychology. None of them were in evolutionary psychology, which is the data I'm giving you now. Yes, 83% of women, when surveyed in multiple different surveys, said that if they had the choice to stay at home and be a mother and take care of their kids rather than be out working, said that they would prefer to have done that. That's the issue. And that is why the majority of the GDP, even to this, it's not 50-50. 50% of the GDP does not come from women at this point.
But the majority of men actually expect a woman to make half the income now. So how are those two things even corresponding?
I've never seen any data. Again, you're going to go with anecdotal data, and I'm going to use data where they survey tens of thousands of people.
I'm just going with all the relationships
I've never seen,
where the man fully expects her to bring in half the money and do twice as much labor.
Got you, Cynthia. I have more clients than you do. I'm telling you, there's no data that's going to show that every man expects for women to pay half the money. You will not find a single survey that shows that.
Oh my God. Then you need to go survey some dating apps, because you will repeatedly go survey people.
I'm not saying there aren't some men
that
that want women to make half the money, but when surveyed, in every single time about women care more about the amount of money that men make than the other way around. And there's no exception to this in any society. It's about 100% more. Now, in certain
if she's
societies,
going to take care of the children, he has to be able to take care of their lifestyle, and their lifestyle is not going to be the same unless he's making at least.
Again, you're making an excuse for what I said is true. In places like Norway, where it's a more egalitarian nature, it's like 40 or 50% more. But in places like again, where there's more patriarchal society, like in the Middle East, it's like 200 or 300% more. So you're correct. I don't disagree with you on that. But the reality situation is women, it's not a situation where men and women are in agreement that men and women should be each doing 50% of the work. In most cases, women are more concerned with men's ability to procure resources. In 100% of cases, in 100% of societies, women are more interested in men's ability to procure resources than the other way around. Men are more concerned with their own status. Women are more concerned with a man's status.
That's been drilled into their DNA. Because if you talk about
when you say drilled into
biology,
DNA, I'm not arguing with you. But when you say drilled into DNA, are you talking about culture, or are you legitimately talking about entomology?
I'm legitimately saying that a lot of the things that we're going through, that we're trying to get somewhere in the middle of, because our society is changing and we're in the process of evolving as a world where women have much more rights and much more equality, still not paid the same amount. But I believe that it's a lot of the things that you're referring to, like saying 83% of women said that, which I still find incredibly hard to believe.
Yeah, I think it should be higher. I think it's probably higher than that, actually.
I honestly, I don't know 80% of women that actually want children anymore. I
find
that number to be crazy, because the majority of women.
These are women, sorry, Cynthia. These are women in the workforce who have children that are surveyed.
Oh,
women in the workforce who have children.
That's
83% of those women say that they would have rather have been able to not work and then stay at home.
Yeah,
that's what's going on.
Yeah, I think there's a more truth to that statistic than saying it just is women in general. But